What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets'd Podcast. We are back with the number one Mets'd Podcast recurring guest, Matt Eddy of Baseball America. We are here to talk about Mets prospects. We're seeing a lot of them, not just on the pitching side, but also on the hitting side during spring training at camp right now. And there's a lot to talk about. First and foremost, though, Matt, thank you for joining us. How you been? What's going on?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. We got a little delayed this year, but it's always fun to talk Mets prospects.
It is, and spring training is always such a great time to get, for a lot of fans, the first up close look at a lot of these prospects. We're seeing regular playing time from Carson Bench as he competes for the right field job. We're seeing AJ Ewing, Jonah Tong keeps adapting, Jack Wenninger. Is there anything that's caught your eye from any of the top prospects so far this spring that's maybe made you a touch more excited, or even maybe a touch more anxious or doubtful about just any guy that you've noticed anything changing?
Yeah, that Ewing home run the other day was notable. It got some distance. The guy has shown power in the past. He kind of de-emphasized it a little bit last year, but it's there and it might reemerge. Wenninger, you guys have talked a lot about him. He's a really fun development story. I'm rooting for him. He's fascinating.
What makes Wenninger fascinating? I know that we play in a couple dynasty leagues, and you love Wenninger. I think Mark and I are really falling in love with Wenninger as well. What about his development's been fascinating, and where do you see his just like future in the Mets rotation?
His development is fascinating because he's like a seventh round pick out of Illinois. He was known for his splitter coming out of college, but with a pitcher who's like changeup or splitter oriented, you kind of have to take Class A results with a grain of salt because those hitters tend not to see such outstanding pitch types of those variety. So I think his fastball development, his mound presence, his command, his ability to adapt and expand his repertoire are all extremely notable. And I see him number four floor, potentially for more. If the splitter plays as well against major league hitters, there's some upside there.
Yeah, the Mets have had a bunch of really exciting prospects so far that we've seen throughout camp. We do have to talk about some of the bigger ones, though. I know we're going to get into the guys a little bit lower down this list, but Carson Bench is someone that I think a lot of people, not just Mets fans, but in general, are very excited about. And me and James keep kind of having this conversation about what we can realistically expect from Carson Bench maybe this year and what gets everybody excited about him moving forward. Maybe you can help the people at home understand what the hype is with Bench.
Yeah, he does everything well. I think that's the most succinct way to say it. Will he have a plus batting tool? That is to be determined, but he definitely has average to above potential in hit and power. I think one of the most informative comps that I've heard is a Josh Reddick style of player, where he does everything well, hits for average, good bat to ball, hits for power, plays a good right field, throws well. Reddick has a pitching background as well, just like Bench does.
It's kind of rare sometimes to see a prospect like Bench rise as much as he has without, like you mentioned, like the true carrying tool. Like Bench, even the 100th percentile outcome is never probably going to be a 40 homer bat. I don't think he'll ever win a batting title, but I guess in terms of 100th percentile outcomes, that's like the closest thing. I don't think he'll ever win a Gold Glove at a premium position. It's just he'll never steal like 40 bags, but like there's just something everything is good, everything is well. Do you seek that kind of giving him even like any kind of thing close to an all-star ceiling if it could ever get there? Or is it just kind of more of this is going to be a cog in the machine rather than ever someone who's can be a star just because of how level all of those tools are at the top?
Yeah, I would say all-star is a possibility. A loud first half and each team needing a representative. It could work in his favor. I mean, the Mets are trending in a way that they won't have to have like a sole token representative.
Yeah,
Hope so.
But not like Billy Butler's Royals.
Yeah, I think you could see like a 3 or 4 month segment of his career that's all-star worthy.
When looking at Mets prospects, there's a lot of things that are similar about these guys. There's a lot of things that's different. One common thing that keeps happening, especially with the guys at the top, is the Mets are looking at these two-way players and then are just making them focus on one of those sides. Is that something that you've seen, not just from the Mets, but around the league, is something that seems more and more, I don't want to say like interesting, but more enticing for these organizations to look for?
Definitely. It's something I'm really training myself to keep an eye on. We saw the rise of Peyton Tolle last year with the Red Sox. We saw Cade Horton have a Rookie of the Year caliber season. Paul Skeens obviously has a two-way background. McLean is an outstanding example. So to me, I think there's Definitely something to it. And I think organizations are keying in on this as well.
How has the system grown in the last few years as the Mets have began to really modernize their player development, scouting, just kind of all their internal processes? Are we seeing year over year improvement of the farm system? And do you see the system even right now being better than it was a year ago, despite the fact that we're about to have some pretty serious graduations? And we traded from a lot of the depth and recently kind of the top tier of it.
Yeah, the system is at peak level right now. I think you'd have to go back to 2014 and that time period to find one comparable. And then before that, probably I don't want to say it, the Generation K group, the Paul Wilson, Isringhausen, Pulsifer group. Um, yeah, I think the key to the Mets building up the system has been identifying the arms that they can cultivate in the minor leagues and really getting the most out of them as they progress. We touched on Wenninger. He's a classic example. McLean is probably the best example you could possibly ever find of such a project. But that has given them um, a stable of potential major league arms, and some we've already seen, and as well as trade chips.
I want to read off the Mets 2014 prospect list just because I think it's a fun exercise right now. So, number 1, Noah Syndergaard. Number 2, Travis d'Arnaud. Number 3, Rafael Montero. Dominic Smith, Wilmer Flores. A very young Ahmed Rosario in 2014, 18 years old. Brandon Nimmo, Kevin Plawecki. One of my favorites at the time, Cesar Puello. Kevin Cicchini, Dilson Herrera, Stephen Matz. Number 14, Jacob deGrom. That's number 19, Aries Familia. This actually was a list of a lot of converted major leaguers with pretty solid careers. That's a great comp.
Yeah, I remember hearing buzz on Familia and deGrom when they were in the Sally League. It's like scouts are saying, we don't know if these guys are legit, but they have great arms.
It's kind of funny to think about too, just like how the prospect evaluation game works, where like, and me and James are learning this too, where each league you look at different things, you look at different traits. You know that age is important to level, and level is important to what your performance looks like, and even now the difference of like going from AA to AAA and how you get the major league ball. Yeah, the baseball can change how you evaluate these guys. Mets have a crop of other pitchers now, kind of in the mid-teens, late teens on Baseball America's prospect list. Which one of these do you think could be like the next like Wenninger or Tong type range where we're talking like Santucci, Thornton, Will Watson?
Oh yeah, I like all three quite a bit. Thornton to me is perhaps the most undersold just because his fastball velocity and ability to miss bats has come on extremely well. Like he was, I think his strikeout rate rose like 10 percentage points year over year, and he's got this he's more deception in command than he is like outstanding stuff. But that plays with left-handers, and I think he's kind of a deeper sleeper name. Watson is also outstanding, and Santucci, more traditional power-oriented pitchers with a reliance on like two pitch types right now. They probably need to expand a little bit to be more of lockdown starters.
Even thinking about Thornton and Watson, like these are also guys like you mentioned, Wenninger. These are not really the types of prospects that are supposed to convert always to being even major league caliber starters at all. Zach Thornton came from Grand Canyon University. He's a 5th-round pick. Mets gave him a $350,000 bonus, which that doesn't really convert. What makes the Mets so good recently in developing these pitching prospects and giving them an actual chance to become these impact major league level arms?
Yeah, Thornton was a Kansas prep and 2 years of junior college in Kansas, and then he was teammates of Jacob Wilson at Grand Canyon.
Really? Ah.
What makes them so good? They're really good at coaxing velocity out of these arms that they can find, especially the college pitchers, that they really think they can work with. And they're able to get the velocity gains without sacrificing command and getting the pitch types that work for the way that each pitcher throws. They've really shown to be quite adept at that.
Out of those three guys, as we likely get graduations this year, of course, from Nolan McLean, also potentially, probably from Jonah Tong, who do you foresee is the Mets, possibly even Wenninger? If you take Wenninger out of that trio you just mentioned before, who do you see this time next year as the Mets' #1 pitching prospect?
I like Santucci. I think there is the command gains that he made last year were outstanding. The Mets say that they just told him throw it down the middle and let your pitches act because they're good enough to work in that manner. He has a little bit of projection remaining because he did have a position player background. I think he was two-way at Duke as a freshman
Everyone
before
is.
pitching, before pitching only. He reminds me a little bit of like a young Patrick Corbin in terms of fastball and dominant slider pitcher, left-hander.
Is there a changeup that's coming there for Santucci? I know he had one at Duke. I know he hasn't shown the same quality or even just willingness to throw it so far in the system. Is that just the Mets being like, we want, like you said, to get that fastball and slider at such a dominant level, and then when the third pitch comes when you need it, we'll just let it come then?
Yeah, they don't. From what I understand, they don't really force the pitch types on pitchers. They want it to be more organic, where the pitcher comes to realize, I need something else here to go to the next level. And like you said, Santucci does throw a changeup, but he's mostly four seam and slider.
But first, a quick message from our sponsor, Fox One. From WBC through the World Series to the World Cup to NASCAR and IndyCar, with Fox One, you get it all live.
Start your 7-day free trial today. Offers are subject to change.
Download Fox One today and stream the World Baseball Classic live, March 6th through March 14th.
And go to fox1.com for complete terms and conditions. Fox One, streaming now.
World Baseball Classic, it's getting started. You got Team Brazil, Team USA on Friday. Logan Webb on the mound. That's going to be a slaughtering.
Oh, yeah, I want 15 runs from Team USA in that one. Similar on Saturday night when Team USA and Tarek Skubal goes up against Great Britain, famously known for their baseball.
Gross. I mean, it's just not fair. Team USA is going to be great. And again, you could watch it all on Fox One. Go to fox1.com for complete terms and conditions. Fox One, streaming now.
Can't wait for the World Baseball Classic.
Let's talk about another former two-way guy. First-round pick last year for the Mets, Mitch Voit. He's a name that I've been hearing a lot about. It seems like he's getting some real helium right now, especially because the Mets are trying him at shortstop, and apparently he's been hitting the ball harder. What's your thoughts on a prospect, Mitch Voit?
Yeah, really interesting guy. You can see some of the same things that might have drawn them to Benj, drawing them to Voit, the two-way background, once again. And just the ability to do everything at a major league level, average to above, potentially. I think that's very appealing. The versatility of Voit is also appealing. I don't think you can rule out second, third, or short for him. I think potentially outfield as necessary could be in his future. But yeah, I think the all-around nature of his game, good wheels. I think there's a lot of different things to like.
Got another question, Matt, too. Like, you're talking a lot about these Mets prospects, and there is a common theme, too, with just well-rounded players. Is that something that a lot of organizations in baseball do? Is this Mets specific? I feel like sometimes when we're talking about prospects and we look at orgs, some teams will go for mega high ceiling guys, and they'll just hope that you throw it at the wall, something sticks, get a couple of hits here and there. Are the Mets playing a safer game? Is this something that we see often with organizations?
It might be a function of their draft position and draft pool as much as anything, because they're picking 19 to 28, and I think there's the range for Benj and Voit. So you do have some chances at upside there, but all of those upside players come with major flaws when you get to that part of the board.
Does that mean maybe there's some kind of adjustment the Mets are making in the international market? 2 years in a row now, more so than basically the whole decade before, we've seen the Mets make a very high investment, specifically at the top of the market, starting with Elian Pena, now recently Wandy Asanyan. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Asanyan. Is there a motivation for this team because they're probably not able to get as, air quotes, high potential of a college or high school player to push themselves to try and take more swings into the international market?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely it. Because you see that a lot of the premium up the middle players do come from Latin America. And Pena and Asinyan, I haven't actually heard that pronounced by a Mets official yet.
I mean, he's like 16, so.
I'm using my Spanish 3 from college to try and get that one, so.
I didn't know that he had the Enye in his name, which sounds like what you're pronouncing. I think those guys are two very good, high upside plays by the organization with a chance to stay on the infield and hit. And I think, this is the organization that, 10 years ago produced Ahmed Rosario, Francisco Alvarez, Ronnie Mauricio, and Andres Jimenez, can't forget him.
No.
In rapid succession. And since then, it's been a pretty quiet decade for the international side of the Mets development.
So with that, we've now talked kind of a lot about the next tier of players here, like likely getting graduations this year from what's going to be the top 3 in the system, or top 2 at least. 1 year from now, spring training 2027, who do you foresee as being the Mets' #1 overall prospect in the system?
Uh, uh, no candidate with great confidence would I nominate here, but players like Elian Pena and Mitch Voigt are the more traditional types who you would see ranked #1. Up the middle profiles with batting upside.
Yeah, which is kind of exciting too, because I feel like Elian Pena, like obviously there was the crazy hype whenever your favorite team signs an international prospect for the money that they did. And then I feel like it kind of cooled off a little bit. And now we're seeing again he's inside the top 10 for Baseball America's prospects for the Mets going into the season. Is it just the upside? Is it just that he seems like someone who could absolutely mash at the major league level, hopefully one day in like 6 years from now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all about the bat with Pena. He's already physically mature and not the type of player you typically see at shortstop in the major leagues. But if the bat develops, then third base will be absolutely fine.
Developing pitchers has kind of become synonymous with the Mets recently over the last few years. Everyone talks about the pitching lab. Our friend of the show, Lance Brozdowski, has deemed the Mets pitching development right now the best in Major League Baseball. But at the same time, we have seen big gains from the hitters, like we've alluded to over the last few minutes. Like we've talked about AJ Ewing finding more power. Last year were huge years for both Ryan Clifford and Jacob Reimer, very big bat first prospects who are inside Baseball America's Mets top 10. What are the Mets doing to possibly help these hitters? And is this something that seems like it's transferable and might continue to happen, similar to how we view Mets pitching development?
Yeah, in discussions with the org's player development, they really like to focus on finding what a player does best and really emphasizing that. Really, you might say that they're helping them develop their best selves. Ewing last year made it a focal point to kind of level his swing and focus more on bat to ball and angles, and it yielded a 300 average, 400 on base, like 70 steals. So he got the most he possibly could out of that approach. And as if spring training is any indication, we might see a little more return to power as he develops. Which, and a lot of scouts believe like you can hit or you can't, and that the players who are hit first can add power as they mature. I think that's fair to assume will be the case with Ewing.
I like seeing too towards the bottom of this prospect list on Baseball America, you've got Ryan Lambert, you've got Dylan Ross on there, two guys who we expect probably at some point to be at the major league roster in 2026. What's the process of evaluating a relief pitcher prospect versus like the standard starting pitcher?
Ooh, I wish I had the secret on that one. That is that it. The stuff plays against minor league batters. That's a good indication for someone like Ryan Lambert. I think it's the workload. Being capable of working 2 out of 3 days for 6 months at a time. It's so difficult to assess that because relievers never do that in the minor leagues. They never do it in college. It's the great unknown with projecting relievers forward.
Is there something more to developing relievers as relievers, or over time? Because again, this is just off of the gut feeling. Is there possibly more success of just taking the quadruple A starter and turning them into the reliever when they're 25 or 26 and they already have more of that workload callus built up in general, but not the 2 out of 3 days pitching situation?
Traditionally, that has been the case. I think teams are finding more success with pure relievers out of college now than they were previously. I think like even 10 years ago, you would find like probably 9 out of 10 closers were former starters. I don't know if that's true anymore. But yeah, I think, and you could look at past Mets examples. Joey's Familia,
Yeah.
burned out as a starter in AAA, became an all-star closer.
Eddie Coons?
He's like the one Mets example. I don't remember the last time we developed a reliever.
2007 draft. Oof.
Yeah, I remember that name like living rent free in my head as a kid, being like, I can't wait to see Eddie Coons get to the major league level. And I think he got like 6 or 7 pitches. And I think that was pretty much it.
And Joe Smith, who didn't really succeed with the Mets, but had a
Great
nice
career.
One good year with the Mets for sure.
Did he?
2006, Joe Smith was good. Wow, this is fun.
I
The
forget what
Mets,
trade he was in.
the Guardians, wow, one of those trades.
I'll find it.
The Mets this offseason also promoted a handful of the minor league coaches to come up to the major league staff as they had the exodus there, namely Dan McKinney, who's going to be the assistant pitching coach with the team, and Gilbert Gomez, who I think is going to be the outfield coach and first base coach, if I'm not mistaken. What's the the level of trust that these players, especially coming up, have with the team? And is this kind of a subtle shift that the Mets are making internally to try and continue to make these prospects feel more comfortable and build this team developmentally rather than the more free agent mercenary team we're even seeing this year and over the last few years of the Steve Cohen era?
No, that's a great point about the familiarity because every prominent Mets pitching prospect worked with McKinney at Double A last year, with the exception of Sproat. Sproat was at Triple A and
He's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. That continuity of instruction, of personality, that is a great point. And we saw the Mets had 4 2024 draftees pitch in the Binghamton rotation, but a year later, that's outstanding. And the team won the Eastern League, so it was obviously a successful team playing leverage games.
We've heard those guys talk about how much they loved being on that Binghamton team. Like we've heard Wenninger talk about it. We've heard Tong talk about it 2 years ago. 2 guys not insist anymore. Jet Williams and Drew Gilbert talked about it. How important is it to a team like the Mets to build those relationships? Team that really hasn't had, they have good developmental success over the last few years, but it's been more sporadic than consistent, especially compared to the top tier teams. Having these guys kind of get this familiarity, this comfortability with each other, how important is that to building culture, which maybe that's something the Mets have struggled with of late?
Yeah, that's another great point. I think the Mets really value that continuity and that winning and just those vibes of having a successful minor league operation. They say they do. I mean, every organization probably says the same thing.
Yeah.
I think some of the evidence that you're making note of suggests that it might be true.
You mentioned about how the 2024 class had a bunch of guys last year reach Binghamton. The 2025 class already has a couple guys on the top 30 prospect list on Baseball America, specifically Camden Lohman and Peter Cuso. There's also a couple other pitchers that the Mets took in the first 10 rounds of Peyton Prescott and Nathan Hall and Cam Tilley. Of the 2025 draft class pitchers, Lohman and Cuso being the highest rated ones, what makes you guys excited about them as prospects?
Well, with the high school pitchers, it's all about the projection and the upside. And this is a new approach for the Mets, who had not went over slot to sign a high school pitcher since 2019. Josh Wolf, Matt Allen.
Oh my God!
All right, so I hear we're trading for the next Francisco Lindor. All right.
All I heard was poor Matt Allen there. I wish he was part of this.
But I have to know that it's a completely different regime in every way since that 2019 group.
Yeah, Sandy Alderson.
Yeah. So it'll be Cuso and Lohman. In other words, it's kind of new territory for this organization to develop this type of player.
Do we think that's maybe because finally, after a few years of just slamming college arms in the draft, and we've made tons of jokes about that in these last basically 3 drafts, the Mets would take a college arm every pick from 3 to 12 and just fill the depth of the system they've never had. Is that kind of an indication or a signal to us that they maybe finally feel confident in this pipeline churning, that now it's okay, we can take a lot of time and we can develop these more high upside guys because now the system's full of 4 through 7s?
Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it. I think the other part is just the function of the Mets bonus pool being the second lowest last year. So the way to get the upside is to buy out some high school players, and they just happen to choose these pitchers
and two-way players.
Yeah, and two-way players. And there's Anthony Frobose or Frobose. I don't know how it's pronounced, but he's a two-way high schooler from the New York area.
Really?
I think was he Rutgers? Was that where he came from?
He's from Lakeland High.
Okay.
I think he was Rutgers commit.
Yeah,
shortstop, right?
Perhaps.
Like a player with shortstop size. Nice. That's a fun one.
I see a new name on there that I think probably a lot of Mets fans aren't familiar with at all on the hitting side. Randy Guzman, cracking the top 20, outfield first base, got up to St. Lucie last year, small sample, but absolutely mashed. Is there some real upside with a guy like Randy Guzman?
Yeah, if he keeps hitting like he did in the FCL and FSL late last year, he was revelatory bat speed, power production. There's some interesting carrying ability there if he continues to hit, because he makes pretty good contact for a power hitter and can play a position. He's really limited to first base, corner, outfield. So those will be the roadblocks, but potentially the power potential is there.
There's 2 other bats that.
I just wanted to mention he's the younger brother of Ronald Guzman, former.
Oh, he is?
Really?
Former
Ronald
Major League
Guzman?
first baseman. Yep.
Yeah.
That's like
who
one
was-
of my first interviews ever that I gave was to Ronald
Yeah,
Guzman.
and I believe he tried or is trying to be a left-handed pitcher.
Yeah, with the Yankees, he tried, I think, for like a year or two. And he was throwing like 98 apparently from the
Yeah,
mound.
great arm. Yeah.
Wow. If we had Bat Speed Dave on Ronald Guzman, I would have loved to have seen that at the time. Two other hitting prospects outside the top 10, just outside your guys' top 10 on Baseball America, Eli Serrano and Chris Suero. Felt like they rose a lot last year, kind of spurred by some more defensive value and versatility. We've seen Serrano at center field in some live BPs, inter-squad scrimmages in spring training, and Suero seemingly handling the outfield and having the athleticism to be a possibly an impact defender there. Are those players that you see possibly getting to that 50 future value level, looking like they could be first division regulars at the MLB level?
Potentially best case, but yeah, I think they're representative of the depth the Mets have in their system now, which has been lacking. Like they have, I think Suero being a catcher slash first base slash left field, Serrano being a good hit, good power, versatile outfielder. I think those guys would be top 10 for a lot of organizations, but with the Mets, they are pretty clearly in their second tier of prospects, future major league contributors.
How nice is it now, Matt, that we get to talk about this Mets farm system and talk about like guys like at the 15, 20, 25 range. And we're starting to like have some real stuff on them when, again, we were joking about how I think the 2021 offseason was, or 2022 offseason was the first time that we had you on, and just reading some of the prospect names that were even in the top 10 of these Mets lists, like just guys were like, where'd they go? What happened to them? Like, again, unfortunately for Matt Allen, we know what happened there, but even like a Khalil Leela, Yoel Diaz, Calvin Ziegler, those are the guys we used to get excited about. Now it's a whole different crop of prospects in the Mets system.
Yeah, I love it when you read those names. I think we did that last year too.
Yeah. But that's a big question, and I kind of want to talk a bit about just where this team's at this year and your fandom for the Mets. But Jonah Tong, all the eyes are still kind of on him. I think some fans, because of the small sample we've seen last year and a lack of effectiveness this spring, are significantly lower on them than I think most prognosticators, people in the prospect world are. But it is clear that there are roadblocks that are stopping him from being an impact major league starter at this exact second. How does he get to the next level? And is it kind of realistic to assume that he can impact the major league teams as starting pitcher in 2026?
Yeah, you guys have talked extensively about the repertoire needs to expand. Just being four seam changeup is a tough road for a right-handed starter in the major leagues. Whether that's a cutter, curveball has shown promise in the past. I think that overall command also it was an issue because he appeared to struggle to really command his fastball in the major leagues last year, and he wasn't getting the same level of chase. 'Cause I think pitchers or batters were a little more comfortable laying off that pitch than minor leaguers were. So I think finding somebody to mix it up or locate the pitch better would be helpful.
Now let's talk about the Mets just in general, because we know you're a Mets fan, and we gotta talk about how you're feeling about 2026. So many changes to this team, to the roster. I know you've been listening to us, so you've heard our opinions, but now we got to hear yours. How are you feeling about the team?
Yeah, no, I think changing out the core it was time. That group had been together for 7 years and produced 2 playoff teams. I think.
That hurts.
Nothing against the players. They're all good players, good to great players. But I just think it was time for a change. I think they identified a lot of players with present value and pretty good chances of continuing to be contributors.
We've talked a little bit off air privately at how these last few years of the Mets changing their system processes, the David Stearns era, improving this player development, and then being a little bit more, like especially what happened this offseason, cutthroat about major league talent, has somewhat reinvigorated your fandom and your passion for this team. Like just general confidence level heading into 2026. How much higher is it than what this Mets team was doing, even say 5 years ago during Steve Cohen's first season with the club?
Definitely higher than then. But last year was a low point for sure for the organization. So I mean, in some ways, there's only one way to go, and that's up. But yeah, the thing that I appreciate about the Stearns front office is the strategy and the discipline, which were things that were sorely lacking, in my opinion, from past front office regimes.
Yeah, no, it's definitely nice. It's cool to see that it feels like adults are in the room and making the right decisions, which is something that
Computers.
I think, yeah, computers. I think a lot of the time in mine and James' lifetime, especially, just not a lot of adults in the room making the decisions.
Or even just humans in the room. That was the famous thing about the Wilpon analytics staff. There was like 3 people on them.
Yeah.
And now it seems like there's 3 people doing probably the most minute tasks that us on this side of the room could ever even imagine.
My last question I'll ask is that we've seen the Mets invest a ton into the prospects, not just in the coaches that are developing them and the people that are developing them, but also in like their housing facilities and how they take care of these guys.
Nutrition.
Yeah, nutrition. Is this something that you think has also made an impact on why the Mets farm system has become loaded in a season where they traded away so many guys too from their farm system?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of these various training apparatuses, approaches, and voices, I think are helpful. And then, as you note, the nutrition and housing are also pretty fundamental.
Yeah, when we had Brian Lambert on just after the 2024 draft, he was like, "It's so sick here." He was like, "It was like a 22-year-old kid being like, yeah, this house is sweet. I get to hang out with the boys. We get great food every day, and then we just lift and play ball." Like it's funny to hear Mets prospects talk about that. I'm sure it's even funny for you to see the fact that the Mets have like true 40-man roster crunches now.
Yeah.
Like they have to trade from the top tier of prospects. They have to make sure there's room in the AAA staff to let these guys continue to develop. It's a revelation that it's come here. It's fun to do this for 5 straight years with you and see the different levels of excitement out there in the system, the depth of it. But Matt, thank you again. One of our favorite interviews we do 1 or 2 times a year. Tell everybody just where to find you and all the exciting things happening at Baseball America over the next few weeks, or things that have even just come out, like the Mets top 30 prospect list.
Yeah, you could find me, Matt Eddy BA, on Twitter and Blue Sky. And yeah, we're ramping up for spring breakout games and the World Baseball Classic and all the minor league madness to come.
Can't wait.
Guys, that's Matt Eddy. That's the Mets Up Podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. You check out all of Matt's stuff in the description down below. And we will catch you on the next episode. We appreciate you. Peace out.
Peace out, guys. Let's go Mets.